Hello, can you believe it? Twice in one day. I'm really doing the exercise of getting friendly with lives. So, having said that, I'm going to lay a couple of boundaries, parameters for myself. I'm going to let myself have some options. So, one of my favorite Instagram creators is a woman named Francesca, and her account is Limitless Fit Living, Limitless Life _fit, something like that. Francesca. Probably if you do a search for Francesca and then Limitless Living, you'll find her. And what I noticed about her one night, she got me through some really long third shift bakery hours when I was working in the bakery. I realized that this woman is making, hi Urban Meditation, she is making bank with her own late night TV show on Instagram, and she sits there and talks about her cats, and her cats are part of the entertainment. She teaches a lot of practical magic and a lot of spiritual principles for people, and she's highly engaging and highly entertaining. But what I take away, in addition, what I take away from that, from my own professional work, is that she just lets herself be in front of the camera. There's no pretending with her. So for me, that's going to look like there are going to be times when I am going to be looking away from the camera. I've also realized that when I just stare at the camera lens, I'm not making contact with another human, and I forget my train of thought. So as I've said in other videos, when I talk about what's going on with me, I want you all to find a way to relate it to yourself. Like, I'm sharing the stories about myself because they're usable in other people's lives. So I'm giving myself permission to reach around me in the moments that I've written notes. I have actually written notes because I'm interested in talking about Reiki this evening, at least opening that conversation. So we'll jump right in. Reiki. Oftentimes, when I get an idea for a video conversation, I end up having a lot of conversations with myself. And this Reiki conversation can start in multiple directions. And I'm going to tell you one of the reasons why I'd like to have this conversation. First of all, I've had several people this week come up to me and ask me about energy work in general and then Reiki specifically. And I'd like to talk about those two things, energy work in general and then Reiki specifically. And I'd also like to talk about the fear that a lot of people still have around energy practices and things that are still considered, I don't hear the word new age very often anymore, and I'm super grateful for that, but I hear the word woo-woo a lot still, and things that I would call metaphysical, or they might show up in the self-help metaphysical section of the bookstore. So I'm wanting to have this conversation for people who may be resistant to energy medicine or afraid of it. I can relate to that. So people who are like a little bit like, keep that away from me, while at the same time curious about it, drawn to it, and asking questions. So another thing that I will say is I love that people pop in. That's why any of us get on and do videos. I'm not super great at keeping track of like welcoming people in and that kind of thing. So I will just ask for your forgiveness and welcome to my channel. My name is Nakaya, and Earthside Collaboration is my account. So getting back to the Reiki conversation. So I'm going to start with where I started from and hopefully give you a little bit. This is not meant to be a deep dive into Reiki or a deep dive into energy, general energy practices. Again, really, I think what I'm wanting to do this evening is for those people out there who are really freaked out by it and also curious about it. Like, you know, you get drawn into reading people's posts, or you, every time you drive by that business that says Reiki, you see it on a menu somewhere, you're like, what is that? I want to give you some perspective maybe to work with, so that the next time you have an opportunity to actually schedule a session or talk to a Reiki practitioner or an energy worker, you have a little bit more space in yourself to allow for that conversation. So I started out as a licensed massage therapist, and I chose the school that I went to for two reasons. The first reason was I had just moved to the area. I did not know how to get around. And for some reason, back in those days, I was terrified to drive anywhere. So I had two options of schools. One was, it felt like it was across the country, and it was in my state. It was like 45 minutes away from where I lived at the time. And the other one was right there in town. So the first reason I chose my school is because it was easily accessible. The second reason I chose my school is fascinating to me from the place that I am now, but I understood it from where my mind was back then. I chose the school because part of their marketing message was, we only teach what's scientifically proven. And to me back then, I felt like that was important. I felt like that was legitimate, and that certainly validated this weird random desire that I had to go to school for massage therapy. I have shared that story in other videos. I will just share it real quickly here because a lot of people are having this experience right now of not knowing what to do with themselves in terms of creating revenue for themselves. What do I do? What are my gifts? What's my service? You know, how do I make money? So I spent years, literal years, praying because I knew that I didn't want to work a job, but I had no idea of what my other options were. And one year, many years later, I started this earnest, please help me figure myself out in high school. And then years later, the answer came to me, and the answer was very simply, you are going to go to school for massage. And it was in my mind when I woke up one morning. I was so incredibly grateful. I did not understand at all what that meant. I did not understand where it came from, but I followed it. And there are days from where I am now where I wish that I could have that kind of clear leadership, but that's for another time. So I entered school wanting scientific, no bullshit training. Now, I ended up transferring schools because there was a lot going on at the school that I started at that made it very difficult to feel confident about being able to pass my state exam at the end of the program. It was a brand new program and just a lot happening. So I ended up transferring to the woo-woo school, and I say that with love. I'm going to explain the word. Maybe I won't explain the word woo-woo in this one. I have explained that word over the years, but it was a school that it's the oldest school in the state that I graduated from, and they were the oldest school. They had the most experience, and they were putting out highly skilled professionals. I had to take the long road around to get there. So when I started, I was completely bewildered about why I was in school, whereas all of my classmates, as far as I could tell, they had had an experience themselves of recovering from an injury or an accident, or they had witnessed someone in their family or community who had been helped by physical therapy or massage therapy through an injury, an illness, or an accident. People wanted to serve, all of this heart. There were nurses in my program who were retiring, and they wanted to stay in the service field, the health service field, but they wanted out of nursing. And all sorts of people in my class who were very clear about why they were there. And this is what was in the second school that I transferred to. It tended to attract older students. I was, if not the youngest student in my class at the time, I was one of the youngest students in my class at the time. So I went through the entire program, you guys, being completely unclear about why I was there. I just knew that I was told to be there by what I considered my divine guide, and it felt good to me. It felt meaningful to me. So I graduated, I passed that board exam, I got my license. I started practicing. About a year into my practice, clients started telling me they were having these experiences on the table, and it freaked me the fuck out. And some people would have the same experiences. And I won't describe what experiences they were having like too specifically, because I always worry that if somebody decides to work with me, they're going to want those experiences. And the thing is, when we go in for any sort of healing work, we're bringing the majority of what's going to come up in that experience. The person with the skills and the tools is a facilitator and a guide. Okay, so if you've been with me for a while, you know my mind goes in a few different directions at a time. So a couple of roads are possible. There are therapists who are very, so the words controlling are coming to mind, so I'm just going to use that word. They are very skillful at controlling a situation, manipulating energy. They will read bodies and read energy fields and all this sort of thing. And it's a very assertive, the word invasive is coming to mind, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but when I go back to what I just said about the person who's coming in to be the receiver, it's you and I as the receiver who's really bringing in the information. The person with the skill set is working with their tools and whatever information is present. The person on the table most often has a very internal experience. So there are a lot of times when someone leaves a treatment room and they have not expressed what happened for them unless it was super wild. And even then, a lot of people keep that stuff to themselves. So I say all of that because if we hear someone talking about the experiences that they had in a treatment session or any sort of healing session, whether that's sound healing or breath work or hands-on body work or whatever else is out there, we often want the experience that someone else had, especially if it's like a really exciting experience. And we have to know that our life circumstances and our processing system, the way that we engage with the world, and if we are energy aware, the way that we engage with our system, that's what's going to inform and build and reveal what we're going to experience on the table. So my experience is likely not going to be what someone else's experience is. just want to be clear about that. And there are some therapists, practitioners, I'll just leave it at that, professionals who will go in and they'll move things around. And there are some practitioners, professionals, therapists who are, I guess, who like unlayer things, who are less interested in telling you what's going on and more interested in revealing what might be happening. Okay, so hi. Okay, so hopefully that gives you like a framework to work with should you choose to go in and schedule some energy work if you never have. Now, getting back to how I entered into it, I had these people who would come out of the treatment session and they would describe these amazing visuals. And I was seeing nothing, I was feeling nothing, and I was still very much in my Christian training. And so this is where I'm really wanting to connect with some people still in my Christian mindset of like, there's something wrong with this, something wrong with me if I'm like doing this, like making this happen. And also afraid that if I'm making this happen, like if this is me or, you know, something about what I'm doing, then I'm like setting myself up to be attacked in some way, or, you know, all kinds of stressful, distressing ideations happening in my head. So I resisted for a while longer. And as I was preparing for this conversation earlier today, I went back through I keep a binder of my certifications. And I've known for years, like when I talk about Reiki for years with people, I tell people it took me 9 years to go from the level 1 Reiki initiation to the level 3 teacher training initiation. 9 years, because I just, like, for half of those years, I wasn't feeling anything. I didn't believe in it. But the people that I worked with were still having experiences, and some of those experiences, like, they matched people who didn't know each other, people days and weeks and months apart from each other, and sometimes people back to back, like whatever it was. I kept getting the message that something that's not musculoskeletal in the way that we think of musculoskeletal, physical, tangible, earth, three-dimensional stuff, something else was working in that room when I was in the room with clients. And it was upsetting to me that I didn't understand what it was. I didn't know what to do with it. So I found my trainings. I actually took more than I thought, but I started in 2001. And what I want you to understand is a couple of things. And so I'm going to just slow myself down a bit and speak to you about this. So let's go back to the upbringing that some of us have. So I was raised in a very conservative household. We went to church every Sunday. One of my parents worked in the church. That was their job. That was their service, and they meant it. Like, it was a heartfelt, this is my belief system. This is the way life is. This is the way the afterlife is. This is wrong. These things are okay, etc., etc. There are so many stories that I can tell you about this. I'm speaking specifically to people who've grown up in that way as well. Now, there's only, okay, so this is what I want to say. Certain kinds of Christians will be able to roll with me in this conversation, and others won't even have come on to this call. And some people, as soon as I say the word Reiki, are just going to like dip out. So wherever, like, some folks are already tapped out. If you're still here and you strongly identify with Christianity, then I'm speaking to you at this point. There is so much to say about the way that we've been raised and mentally trained in that tradition that has nothing to do with that tradition, the way that Christ, the teacher, laid it out. Like the way that this man showed up in his teachings and in his service in the world. And one of the things that I understand at this point is that he was teaching people about the energy body. That was something that he was very aware of and that he was teaching. And I believe that, you know, when people talk about the second coming of Christ and all of this very churchy stuff, I believe that the majority of people that I'm listening to are missing the point. For those people who can hear and maybe catch this, if you're not already on it, my understanding of that idea of the second coming of Christ is that the man laid it out for humanity, whoever wanted to listen. This is the way that you ascend. This is the way that you express Christ consciousness. Now, he didn't call it Christ consciousness because he wasn't calling himself Christ. That's what came later, after he was murdered. I'm just going to say it like that. What I want to communicate about this is that the message and teachings of Christ, which is what a Christian is supposed to be focused on, it's supposed to be the New Testament teachings. That's when Christ came on scene and started teaching this new and elevated way of experiencing our connection with God, our relationship with God, not connection, but relationship with God, and our expression of our own divinity in our physical form in our life. Part of that message was, it included energy medicine of the energy bodies. So, Christ's teachings and energy medicine are not at odds with one another. And I'll leave that there. Now, I'm just going to take a pause. Sometimes I get really fired up and then I like, it's like tumbleweed in my brain, except the tumbleweed is a bunch of words and they just get all caught up in one another. So I'm looking at I wrote out all the dates of my training and certifications for Reiki, specifically Reiki. And there's 7. I have 7 dates. And then there were a couple of classes that I didn't, that I like sat on to learn how to teach for myself. So from 2001 to 2016 is the last date that I have. Like that. And the funny thing about that is some people can do Reiki 1, 2, and 3 back to back and have it done within 6 months. Like that's how some programs are set up. That was not the case for me. I was really, really stubborn in my mind. I really wanted proof. And I had a, you know, we talk a lot about the imposter syndrome a lot these days, especially in the online communities. But I used to think in terms of the emperor's new clothes a lot, and especially when it came to energy work. Like people would have these experiences and I would have the image of the story of the emperor's new clothes. If you don't know that story, it's an old, like, I think it's a parable, and it's worth I think especially these days, like in every cycle of humanity, it's a valuable story to have in mind, but now it's super applicable. There was something else. I should have stopped and grabbed it. Dang. The other thing was, I would also be the student in class, especially in these energy medicine classes. And it actually didn't happen a lot with Reiki. So I am going to talk a little bit about Reiki and other modalities. What I'm speaking of now is a lot of the other modalities. There was one in particular that I went through the entire training for, all the levels, and got certified in all the levels. And it was one of those moments where I was like, it's kind of like church, depending upon like what kind of church you went to. But, think of a real like evangelical expressive where they're, speaking in tongues and like laying on of hands and just a whole lot of just expressive, like, feeling the Holy Spirit. Well, in some of these energy medicine classes, I would have this experience. People would be just feeling all sorts of things. And I would be feeling nothing, nothing. And I would keep showing up. I would keep showing up because at some point I started to understand that just because I don't feel it and I can't see it and I do not understand it doesn't mean that my people on the table are not having the experiences that they're having. And the reason that I understood this was because people just kept saying, "What are you doing right now?" Or I felt like heat. People would feel heat. When I felt cold, they would feel this radiant heat coming off the hands. Things like this. I don't know if I'll get to it in this video, but I've had, as the years went on and as I stayed with the practices, I started having some interesting experiences myself. And I will go ahead and share them now because I forget things. So for the longest time, I didn't, like, I loved the intellectual content of learning the chakra system, but I didn't, like, my brain wants to know why and how. And I know there are a lot of you out there who are like, if I can't see it and touch it, taste it, smell it, it doesn't exist for me. And that's a super valid, it's a valid point. And if we stay in that mindset, we will get stuck. We'll get lost in that. So we'll miss out on some really amazing things that are legitimate and still can't be explained. The other thing that I learned early on in my work, and I learned this by the physical manipulation I was doing as a massage therapist, the science community had not caught up with like lymphatic flow and lung capacity and oxygenation of the blood and the immune system being boosted and the endocrine system being regulated through massage therapy. We were still, a lot of us in school, heavily relying on Dr. Tiffany Field's research with infants as like the proof that this amazing work that we were doing was valid. So I say all of that to say that science is often behind what the non-verbal information system of the human understands, recognizes, and knows how to work with. And I would like you, like, if you're taking notes, I'd like you to write that down. Science is often behind what the human body understands and recognizes as real. Now, I didn't say the human brain, I said the body. So everybody watching has had the experience of being in a room and like the hair standing up on the back of your head. Or, there are some of you out there who are really good at thinking of something or someone, and that something or someone shows up in your actual field within 24, 48 hours, whatever that is. Those are nonverbal systems of communication that our bodies understand how to be masterful with. Science takes a while longer, as cool as it is. So, okay. Let me talk a little bit about Reiki as a system and so I was going to say general energy work, but what I'm I'm gonna like put a lot of other systems in a category over here. So again, oftentimes as I say something, I will get like an example of there's always an exception to a rule. So you guys will see me stop and like look around because like literally my brain in the air is just full of like options. Okay, so Reiki is a very structured system of working with energy, and we can work with the human body with a Reiki practice, and we can work with animals, we can work with space, like rooms, buildings, relationships, food. So, and this goes for all sorts of energy medicine. There are people who pray over their food and will do like prayer hands over their food. It's a way of transmitting energy, a way of elevating the vibration of something, clearing out harmful or potentially harmful vibrations, frequencies, etc. It feels really good, you guys. It's like, for me, it's like a meditation. It feels really good. It has taken me a long time to get to the point where I can just sit down and feel it moving through like this. So, okay. So, the thing about Reiki is that it is a practice, whereas some of the other systems are a practice in the sense that, like with I spent a lot of time studying Ayurvedic body work. So Abhyanga, Shirazara, the Bastis. I love oil and aromatics and herbs, and Ayurveda is just so rich in that. And there is, I had the opportunity to study with a woman named Anisha, and I've put her book away. Anyway, she wrote an amazing textbook on Marma therapy. So Marma therapy is the Ayurvedic acupressure system. And what I'm saying is that is practiced, meaning that, and I am oversimplifying this because this can, like, Marma therapy can be a daily practice. And then when it's like allowed to be part of the comprehensive package of Ayurveda, then within that package, meditation, eating in a good way, all of these lifestyle practices are what make up Ayurvedic health. Marma it's something that can be extracted from and offered on its own. And so as a practice, I can go in and I can work those points, and I can learn a protocol for the body. I can learn the points and go in and apply specific points depending upon what's showing up in my treatment room, etc., etc. Reiki, I have found, is unique in terms of energy, the energy medicine field. So I wrote down some of my other trainings just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Some of the other energy specific practices that I studied were quantum touch, pranic healing with Master Ko and then some of his students, and the reconnective healing, and then Marma therapy, which is, it's different for me because Marma therapy is hands-on, but it is working meridians, and then Marma points, which are these little portals. That's how I think of them. But they're bigger than acupressure points. Marma points they're bigger circles on the body. They're bigger. Um, it's a beautiful practice. Those are some of the other styles of energy medicine that I've gotten into. The one that I spent the most time with outside of like Ayurvedic practices, I also studied reflexology that was presented from the polarity therapy perspective. So the way that we studied and practiced reflexology was less about like digging into the body and way more about working with the poles of the body, and a lot of polarity therapy concepts. Polarity therapy is pretty cool. You can look that up. I don't see a lot of polarity therapy practitioners out there, but that's an entire system, much like acupressure would be, just a different touch and approach. So of the things that I've studied, Reiki is a system. So there's running the energy. What allows us to tune into that, like the felt sense of it, is our daily practice of the so Reiki has what are called precepts. They're guiding principles, and there are physical practices. So basically, in the beginning, level 1, a person is learning how to feel and notice their own energy body first. And there are a number of practices that are assigned daily. And so long as you keep up with those practices, you'll, it might be 16 or 15 years down the road. I mean, it didn't take me that long. It was about 2009. And if I have time, I'll go into some of the different styles of Reiki. But about 2009, when actually, I guess it was 2003. So it wasn't that far down, actually. So like 3 years into practicing. Anyway, not important. It's the practices and the consistency with the practices, just like exercising, anything else, any other muscle. This is the muscle of attention and sensitivity in the beginning, and then the muscle of allowing as we go deeper into the practice. So it's our practice with the practice in Reiki in the beginning, and actually all through the levels, that deepens our work and in many ways makes it more available to ourselves and then anybody who might be showing up to receive treatment from us. Okay, so I wanted to go over the precepts because they're actually really useful. If you never get into Reiki, just working with the precepts, and again, precepts are guidelines. For those of you who have like the 10 Commandments in your mind as language, they're not God-given, but I think that they are in another way. They're very valuable. And in some ways, following these precepts would allow someone dedicated to following the 10 Commandments, but perhaps struggling, because, that happens all the time. Following these sorts of precepts would prevent someone from violating the commandments or the golden rule. So the precepts are, for today only: do not anger, do not worry, do not anger, do not worry, be honest in your work, be compassionate to yourself and others. The language and the way these are written up at this point will shift, you'll notice, especially if you've taken as many different Reiki classes from as many different teachers as I have done. Yeah, I took my level 2 and level 3 from the same teacher because I wanted to stay in like one person's teaching style to completion. But I do have 4, 5, 6, 7 different teachers on there. And I have taken more than, yeah. So anyway, again, doesn't matter. But if you're a professional watching this, if you've made it this far and you're a professional watching this, I recommend studying the same thing, the same modality, if you're able to, from multiple perspectives. It gives you a lot more range to work with. Just going to offer that to you. So I got this. I'm using my Shodan level 1. So I really love the International House of Reiki, which is Franz Stein's Reiki approach to Reiki. And I came to that. That was actually my last Reiki training around. I think I probably got introduced to Franz like sometime around 2014 or so. And then I took that class in 2016 and did some online like meditations and things like that. I feel like he is one, I'm going to say rare Reiki teachers who goes deep with the precepts and just the whole offering that is Reiki, which has a lot to do with doing no harm and really about the practitioner working the precepts and staying in a harmless state is what's coming to mind. Again, there's so much. This is a really big conversation. And I'm really interested in creating some ease and comfort because energy practices in general are incredibly powerful. And now I'm talking about things like Qigong. That is an incredibly powerful system. Tai Chi, which is very physical, like it's deceptively physical. The deception is it looks so slow and flowing and peaceful, but when you get in there and you start practicing it, like if you haven't been doing anything else with your body, and even if you have, I think when you get up the next day, next few days, you're gonna feel muscle fibers that you did not know you had. I'm not talking about like even the little tiny like skinny muscles in the fingers and like the small attaching muscles. I'm talking about fibers of muscle. For some of you who can pay that close attention, you will feel fibers in pain because it's very slow and precise. But when we're also moving energy in those practices. And here's the thing about any kind of energy practice, whether or not you're a professional. This is the other thing about Reiki. You don't have to be a professional to do Reiki, to study it, to learn it, to sit in a class. I took a lot of classes with people who had no intention of using this for anything else, anyone else. They were just learning for themselves. They wanted to have an understanding of what was happening with them anyway. Some people were starting to feel energy and didn't understand what it was, and Reiki is like a really easy, accessible modality to get into, and it's very structured. That's what I want to say. Reiki is probably the most structured of the energy modalities out there, like the hands-off modalities out there that involve another person or can involve another person. So acupressure, marmotherapy, reflexology, I remove those from this part of the conversation because they're hands-on. They really rely on contact, even though contact's not necessarily needed even in those practices as you go along. It's so amazing. But anyway, just like basic stuff, contact. So like quantum touch, pranic healing. Pranic healing is another very specific, like recipe style system, which is one of the reasons why I only decided to go so far with pranic healing, because it's like, back then when I was studying these things, I wasn't confident enough to free myself up to like take the information and then make it mine. I felt like I had to do it the way it was laid out for me, and I couldn't remember, like, with pranic healing, it's like, do I do that 5 times there or 7 times? And do I do it clockwise or counterclockwise? And do I do the front back? Like, I just was like, I can't keep it straight. Whereas now I understand, I just move where it goes. But there are people who are very structured, and there's a protocol. They follow the protocols. Pranic healing had a lot of protocols. Reiki is more fluid, but the protocols with Reiki are what we're doing for ourselves. So we're practicing non-anger. We're practicing not worrying. The things about anger and worry, if you've never experienced these before, is that they create stress responses in the body. They both shut us down to information in the body that's super important, in terms of us making quality choices for ourselves. And stress and worry shuts us down to information from the outside world, which is necessary in making quality choices for ourselves. So when we practice having a response system that isn't like addicted to anger and worry, we freed ourselves up for a different stream of information. Okay, so I think that I'm feeling like I need to stop for now. I just want to recap though. So again, if you are at all attracted to Reiki or any of the other energy practices, I encourage you to investigate, do some research. With Reiki, there's a lot of books online. And with pranic healing, Master Ko wrote some really great books. He actually wrote an amazing series talking about the 3 Abrahamic religions, so Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and their what are called open secrets or hidden teachings. So open secrets are things that are like, the symbolism is there in front of us, but the meaning has been like hidden from the masses. He offers some really great books, textbooks. They're actual textbooks on the deeper teachings of those traditions, and it's beautiful. And if you do identify as a Christian, I found that it filled in a lot of gaps for me back in that period when I was still trying to figure out what I would claim and what I would not claim in terms of my spiritual beliefs. So anyway, what I'm saying there is pranic healing is like, he's written a lot of books. You will be able to find information there. Okay. And then I want to say, if you are willing, be open. If you are being drawn to something like this, especially in the past 3 years, I am absolutely astonished at the number of people who are suddenly awake to and open to these healing tools that prior to 2020, people were still laughing at, ignoring, all kinds of freaked out by, completely dismissive of. That's what I encountered a lot, is just people who are just completely dismissive, even with massage, like still, backed up to 2019, not understanding how powerful touch, actual physical touch is for the body. So if you feel like you're drawn to it, if you're curious about these things, I would encourage you to go in and investigate. Allow yourself to learn some things. There are Reiki teachers all over the freaking place. It's like the most accessible energy practice that's taught that I've seen. So, you know, talk to the teachers and see if you like their, like, if you like their vibe. That can be like one of your first energy practices. You know, can I feel my way around this person in this conversation? What I'm saying is, these times are not the times to be shut down to the tools that can help us, especially the tools that can help us, like, um, raise our vibration. And Reiki is one of those practices that can help raise vibration. Okay, I'm going to stop. My head's getting light, and it's time for me to lay down. All right, I will come back with maybe some more Reiki information and maybe another topic. I am always curious to hear what people are curious about, and happy to talk about the things that I have experience with or passion for. All right, have a great night. Bye.